All right, let's kick off this explainer by tackling what is honestly a massive engineering challenge. I mean, how exactly does a tiny embedded chip juggle time, outputs, and sudden unexpected events without just completely freezing up? If you've ever looked at an embedded system and wondered how a single, relatively simple processor manages to do three things at once, well, you're about to find out.
So, let's map out the four foundational building blocks we're going to explore today. First, we'll meet the embedded timer. Second, we'll get pulse width modulation explained. Third, we'll look at the sheer power of interrupts. And finally, number 4, we'll put it all together.
Okay, jumping into Section 1, meet the embedded timer. We're going to look at independent timekeeping, which is really our first essential superpower here.
Now, the absolutely crucial point to grasp right off the bat is that a timer operates entirely on its own. It is a dedicated piece of hardware embedded directly inside the microcontroller. And because it counts clock pulses independently, it literally frees up the main CPU. The processor can go off and do complex math or handle other tasks, while time is just perfectly tracked in the background.
You can really just think of it as a glowing, autonomous stopwatch running silently right there within the silicon chip itself. It ticks away in the background, and the best part is, it doesn't steal a single execution cycle from your main code.
Now, depending on the level of safety or accuracy a project needs, microcontrollers generally rely on 4 specific types of timers. First, you've got highly precise hardware timers built right into the MCU. Then there are software timers. These use code loops and, unfortunately they do burn precious CPU cycles. Next is the watchdog timer, which is this absolutely essential safety mechanism that forces a system reset if your program ever hangs. And finally, the real-time clock, or RTC, which tracks actual human wall clock time and is usually backed up by a battery.
So why does this matter? Well, in real-world applications, this independent timekeeping is vital. For starters, it allows us to generate exact microsecond or millisecond delays, and these precise little time cushions are absolutely necessary for things like stabilizing sensor data and nailing communication timing.
Hardware timers can also be configured to literally count external pulses. Imagine you're tracking individual items zipping by on a factory assembly line, or maybe you're measuring the RPM of a spinning motor. The timer just sits there and handles all of that counting effortlessly.
Furthermore, by capturing the exact length of an incoming digital signal's period, the timer allows the system to instantly calculate its frequency right on the fly. It's essentially real-time signal analysis driven purely by the hardware itself.
And finally, timers can trigger routine mechanical tasks at exact fixed intervals, say pulling a sensor exactly every 10 milliseconds. This specific repetitive behavior actually forms the structural heartbeat of basic real-time operating system schedulers.
All right, now that our chip can keep perfect time, let's move right into Section 2, Pulse Width Modulation Explained. This is where we figure out how to achieve digital to analog output.
We face a classic digital dilemma here. How in the world do we create a variable, analog-style output using a system that only understands basic on and off states? I mean, how do you get smooth, granular control out of something that is fundamentally binary?
The answer is pulse width modulation, or PWM. It's basically a clever digital illusion that simulates varying power levels just by changing how long a signal stays on during a single cycle. Let's look at duty cycles. A 25% duty cycle has a short on time and a long off time, right? That produces a lower average power. At 50%, the on and off times are perfectly equal. And at 75%, that much longer on time simulates a significantly higher power output.
And the math behind this illusion is surprisingly elegant and simple. It shows that the duty cycle is literally just the percentage of time the signal remains high. You take your on time, divide it by the total period, and multiply by 100. Simple as that. Plus the frequency, meaning how many of those complete cycles happen per second, dictates the smoothness. Bump up to a higher frequency, and you get a much smoother analog approximation.
Which brings us to Section 3, the power of interrupts. Let's look at event-driven efficiency and how a system reacts to sudden events without wasting energy.
Comparing inefficient polling to event-driven interrupts is honestly like a chef constantly opening the oven door to check the food versus simply waiting for a timer to ding. Polling forces the CPU to constantly ask the hardware, hey, did something happen? Did something happen? Which just burns through execution cycles. Interrupts, on the other hand, let the CPU do its normal work until it gets an automatic tap on the shoulder telling it an event just occurred.
The efficiency here is incredible. A sudden event literally pauses the main running loop, quickly executes what's called an interrupt service routine, or ISR, and then returns exactly to where it left off. The CPU never wastes a millisecond just sitting around waiting.
All right, Section 4, putting it all together. Let's walk through a combined system example and watch all these invisible hardware superpowers snap together into one cohesive system.
Let's say we want to blink an LED without blocking the CPU. We simply let a timer count in the background until it hits 500 milliseconds and overflows. Boom! That overflow fires an interrupt, pausing the main loop just long enough to run the ISR, toggle the light, and return. The processor remains entirely free to run all your other complex application logic in the interim. And simultaneously, a timer can drive a PWM block entirely in hardware. By dynamically shifting that duty cycle from 25% up to 75%, a connected motor can seamlessly accelerate. And the absolute best part? This happens completely under timer-driven hardware control. Zero continuous CPU oversight required.
To wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a quick quiz directly from our source material to test your new embedded systems expertise. First, what actually happens when an 8-bit timer overflows? And for bonus points, if a servo needs a 1.5 millisecond pulse, what would the duty cycle be at 50 Hz? As you calculate that in your head, think about this. If these three simple silent concepts form the hidden backbone of almost every embedded application today, how will these fundamental building blocks evolve as we push towards highly autonomous, AI-driven hardware? Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.